Now, just hours before Israel strikes on Iran, US President Donald Trump, on his Truth social media platform, said, "We remain committed to a diplomatic resolution to the Iran nuclear issue. My entire administration has been directed to negotiate with Iran." Trump continued they could be a great country, but they first must completely give up hopes of obtaining a nuclear weapon. He ended, "Thank you for your attention to this matter." That was the President of the United States, then Alan Fisher, who joins us live from Washington, D.C. So the President there speaking on Truth Social. Is that the very latest that we have from Washington then?
Well, that was a few hours ago. That was several hours when perhaps Donald Trump was aware that the Israelis were going to launch an attack. But as we've heard from a number of officials, the US was not involved and was not assisting in the attack. Donald Trump still believes that there is room for negotiation. Of course, that seems highly unlikely now, given what has happened over the last couple of hours in Tehran. Steve Witkoff, who is, of course, his negotiator with the Iranians, was planning to be in Oman on Sunday for the 6th round of talks. But as I pointed out earlier, 61 days ago, Donald Trump warned the Iranians that they had to come to the table within 60 days and discuss their nuclear program unless they could face military action. And now, 61 days later, that military action has taken place. The United States, through Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, did say that they knew that the Israelis were going to take this action, or were informed that the Israelis were taking this action. As far as they were concerned, it was an action in self-defense. He did not say that they welcomed the operation. He did not say that they supported the operation. He just commented on the fact that it actually happened. Donald Trump has been keen to try and bring peace to various places in the world, but it hasn't worked incredibly well. You'll remember that, of course, during the election, he said that he could have a peace deal in Ukraine within 24 hours. That now seems to be further away than ever. He said he would bring a solution to the ongoing fighting in Gaza, the ongoing Israeli operation in Gaza, and would bring a ceasefire. That hasn't happened. And of course, he was very keen that there could be some sort of new Iranian nuclear deal. And that seems further away than ever. Donald Trump perhaps finding that it's easier to make promises about these things than actually deal with the real politic and deliver. It'll be interesting to see what happens at a cabinet meeting that is now planned for Friday morning. Donald Trump will meet with his main national security advisors on what happens next. One of the things that will be a concern to them, of course, is that Israel will expect the United States to help defend if the Iranians take any sort of action. And Donald Trump has, to a degree, painted himself into a corner on this, given that he constantly refers to himself as the most pro-Israeli president that the United States has ever seen. But what is interesting on social media, there are certainly people warning Donald Trump not to get involved in a war that many people see this as Israel's war. And certainly we've heard in the last hour from the senior ranking Democrat on the Armed Forces Committee, who said that this was an alarming decision by the Israelis. It was a reckless escalation and threatens the lives, threatens innocent lives and stability in the Middle East. So he doesn't have blanket support. And so it'll be interesting to see what his next move is, particularly given that Benjamin Netanyahu essentially tied the US to the Israeli action by thanking him so profusely during his short statement.
OK, let's move from Washington, D.C. to Tehran now. I want to bring back in Hamid Reza Gholamzadeh, who is director of Diplo House, a think tank focused on foreign policy. And thank you very much for staying with us. Just latest reports then coming into us that 2 leading nuclear scientists could have been killed in these attacks. What are you hearing then? You are joining us from Tehran, and what has the reaction been there?
So far, we have confirmed reports of martyrdom of IRGC commander General Salami and also the two scientists, Mr. Tehran and Abbasi. As far as we can say, they were not very actively actually active in nuclear activities. Mr. Tehran was head of a university, and Feridun Abbasi was not in the nuclear program anymore. And we cannot say they were, let's say, we can call it active nuclear scientists who were involved actively in the nuclear program. But
this do, though, then, Hamid, to the talks that were planned for this weekend coming? What does this do for the diplomacy that was meant to take place between Iran and the US in terms of securing a deal on Iran's future nuclear policy? Does that mean that those talks are now in jeopardy, in your view?
It's clear now that, more than before, it's clear now that the talks were the carrot part of the story, and now the threats and these strikes are the stick part of the story. So with this situation, the talks doesn't mean anything anymore. Yeah. And I would not expect the negotiations to continue, and I would expect a cancellation of the meetings on Sunday. Because it has no meaning for Iranians to sit at the table with the Americans, who are a staunch supporter of the Israelis, and they have been involved in this attack. They cannot distance themselves from the strikes that were carried out this morning. Because they are supporters, they have provided them with the weapons and the bombs, and they will continue to support the Israelis. So when Iran is going to react and respond to the strikes, there is no doubt that the Americans would try to stop the Iranian missiles and would try to defend the Zionist regime. So they are not separate, and it doesn't have any meaning for the Iranians to sit at the table with the supporters of the ones who have just carried out the strikes against Iran, have killed Iranian civilians and have killed Iranian officials. So what is the use of that? Iran just wanted to prove that it is open to diplomatic solutions to ensure the world that Iran is not pursuing a nuclear weapon, and is open to mutual respect discussions to show that it and give guarantees that its nuclear program is peaceful. When the other side does not want to do such a thing, there is no meaning into sitting at the table and discussing with the Americans about guarantees and about making the nuclear activities transparent to the whole world. So Iran needs to actually step back and to cancel the negotiations and stop the nuclear deals with the discussions with the Americans. And actually, with considering the recent resolution of the Board of Governors of the IAEA, Iran might actually consider other steps, further steps as well, to quit NPT and to completely make its nuclear program something that would be not transparent to the whole world.
Hamid, do stay with us. I just want to bring back in our correspondent here in the studio with us, Ali Hashem. We're seeing the latest pictures coming into us, as we have been for the last couple of hours now, with these breaking news lines that Israel has launched attacks on Iran, on Tehran, but also other areas of Iran. I mean, looking at those pictures there's widespread destruction and likely to be a huge number of deaths, not just with these figures, these high-profile figures that we've been hearing about, commanders in the military, but also women, children, just ordinary people.
Well, this is an act of war. And actually, as it's now clear, the Iranians are currently in a situation where they are deciding what's going to be the next step. Of course, what's obvious is that a next step is going to be retaliation. Now, What's the scope of this retaliation? Is it going to be a declaration of war? Is it going to be a tit for tat? These are all issues that, of course, we wouldn't know, and we'll need to hear from the officials to understand whether they are going to take this path. Yet, the most important point here is whether Iran is going to change its nuclear doctrine. There have been several indications in the past, and actually in different conversations between myself and Iranian officials with respect to the Iranian nuclear doctrine, there were some kind of analysis from them, or at least they were suggesting that in the future there might be a change in this doctrine. However, without having any kind of a, let me say, military dimension. But with such an attack on Iran, take this leadership towards deciding to change or diverting its nuclear doctrine towards pursuing nuclear bombs. This is actually the game changer here. And actually, I wanted to ask this question to Hamid Reza Gholamzadeh. I don't know if he's still with us. If he's still with us, I would like to ask Hamid Reza. Yeah, Hamid Reza, Ali Hashim here. I wanted to ask you whether these attacks, which is actually a kind of an act of war, will change Iran's calculations and will impose on the Iranian leadership a change in the nuclear doctrine towards pursuing nuclear bombs?
I don't expect it to happen like that unless there are serious threats against Iran with nuclear attacks from the Israeli side. In that case, it would be a defense approach, and it would be necessary for Iran to acquire a nuclear weapon. Other than that, I would not expect Iran to change its doctrine, at least in short term, because the fatwa by the leader is still in place, and the only situation that comes to my mind to change the situation is, as I said, if there is serious threats about nuclear attacks against Iran, then a defensive capability of nuclear bomb for the Iranian side would be a requirement, a demand for Iran to take it. In that case, it is possible, but I don't think that we are there yet. The first change that I would expect, as I just mentioned, is that the Iranians would stop their cooperation with IAEA. Maybe gradually. First of all, they're not going to be that cooperative that they used to be, especially after JCPOA. They might leave NPT and other protocols and such things. So in that case, it would be the first response from the Iranian side, technically, about the current situation that we are in.
OK, let us turn now to Tauhid Asadi, who joins us from Tehran. Tauhid, I just want to ask you about reports coming into us that Iranian TV saying that nuclear sites and nuclear figures have been targeted in these attacks. What more can you tell us on that front?
Well, let me just give you a picture of what happened so far. We know that at around 3:30 local time in the morning, there were reports coming out about the different explosions being heard in the capital of the country. 6 of them were initially reported, but right now the footages are coming showing that there are more, not only limited to the capital of the country here in Tehran, but also across the country in different cities. There are very important lines about this unprecedented strikes that Israelis conducted against Iran, and there is going to be further consequences down the road, obviously. But from what I can say, so far we know that residential areas as well as military headquarters have been under attack after this strikes by the Israelis. The source, the means of which is not clear, whether it's airstrike or any other type like missile or anything else. There is no confirmed report on that, but it's still, we know that several people have been killed, including civilians. The footages showing, let's say, the bodies of women and children taken out from one of the scenes of this strike. But the breaking news here is that it was reported and later confirmed that the commander of IRGC, the chief commander of IRGC, Hossein Salami, has been assassinated alongside with another, let's say, top commander of IRGC, which was assassinated in these strikes. And also we've got two at least nuclear scientist, Feridun Abbasi, who was the former head of Iran's nuclear energy organization, assassinated in this strike, as well as Dr. Tehranchi, another nuclear scientist who is the head of Islamic Azad University, right, who was actually the head of Islamic Azad University. And speaking of other targets, in addition to, let's say, different civilian places in different parts of the city, including Chitkar, including Abbasi Square, including Kamraniya neighborhood, and Marzdaran. From these neighbors inside the capital, we are seeing footages of pictures showing attacks on different buildings, and the extent of this strike is very massive. And there are different types, it seems. For example, in one of these scenes, I saw that just one particular floor of a building has been hit, showing the targeted and precise nature of these attacks. Also, in other cases, we see massive explosions damaging the nearby buildings in the city, and also a research center, the detail of which is not known yet, is reported to be attacked. And also a skyscraper in Tehran is reported to be attacked. And in terms of other facilities, we know, or at least we have confirmed and unconfirmed reports on other military and nuclear sites across the country being hit, most important of which I can refer to Natanz nuclear facility, which is critically important when it comes to the enrichment program of the country. But still, reports are coming that the sound of explosion has been heard from different cities and provinces across the country, including Ilam, Hamadan, Khorramabad, Tabriz, Maraghe, Piranshah, and other cities. There are reports coming that the voice and, let's say, sound of explosion have been heard. Air defense system of the country is said to be activated and under 100% preparation. Also, reports are coming that there is a possibility for a next wave of attacks, and Iran is getting ready for that. And last but not the least, the reports are coming that now the air, there is no flight across the air of the country, and what we see is that all flights have been cancelled. Previously, the Imam Khomeini Airport, the main international airport of the capital, announced that it's going to suspend all its flights until further notice. And also, we've got the same statement coming from the Mehrabad, the local, actually, airport in the capital, saying the same thing, but it's still in a broader context. Right now, you don't see any airplane on the air of the country. That's what we have for now, but the story is developing, and we are waiting for further details coming out.
OK, and Iran also saying that, according to the Reuters news agency, that it is planning to give a harsh response to this Israeli series of attacks. Let's go now to Noor O'Day, who joins us from Amman. So Iran saying that they are planning a harsh response. Israel then in a state of emergency, and they are presumably bracing themselves for an Iranian retaliation. What more are you hearing from where you are?
Well, we know that the senior Israeli officials have been taken to a secure location. That has already happened over an hour ago. There is a plan in place, and the chips are falling in place. Hospitals have been instructed to discharge all patients who can go home or to other facilities, care facilities in the country, and to vacate as many beds as possible. All doctors in the Israeli military have been called to active duty. The occupied West Bank has now been declared under lockdown, a measure that the Israeli army would take to better control the territory and to free up those reserve soldiers. The heightened state of alert is comprehensive. There are no schools. There will be no business as usual in Israel. That's according to the commands of the Israeli Home Front to the Israeli public. They've been instructed to stay close to safe areas, to those shelters that are in place in Israeli cities, and to follow instructions as the need arises. But there will be no workflow. The economy will not be going on as normal, and it is really up to the Israeli military how life can proceed in the coming hours and days. The Israeli news outlets and the Israeli military radio says that they anticipate a powerful response from Iran in the coming hours. At the same time, they're also really talking and boasting about these attacks, which continue. One source of the Mossad told the Israeli military radio that the list of those targeted for assassination is quite long and unprecedented. Some reporters, military reporters, have likened it to doing in 10 minutes in Iran what Israel did in 10 days to Hezbollah's leadership ranks, essentially trying to eliminate all of those ranks in that first wave of military strikes on Iran that began almost 2 hours ago. We still wait for confirmation on who exactly among the targets is confirmed to have been killed. But certainly the attack, which according to Israeli sources was sanctioned on Monday, was done in a very comprehensive manner. It was quite well planned, and it also involved, in addition to the airstrikes, it involved clandestine activities and attacks by the Mossad. That's according to, again, the military radio, as close to an official statement as we can get at the moment. Certainly everybody's really on edge, waiting to see how this will happen, what kind of Iranian retaliation will happen, and what ramifications that will have, not just for Israelis, but also for Palestinians who are in the crossfire, whether they want to or not.
Let's take you now then to Washington, D.C. Let's go to Alan Fisher, who joins us live from Washington, D.C. now. Alan, what has the US President been saying? What has the US Secretary of State been saying? What is the US point of view in all of this at the moment?
Well, I can tell you that at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning in Washington, D.C., there'll be a meeting of the National Security Council in the Situation Room in the White House. There are some critics who are suggesting that Donald Trump needs to convene that meeting much sooner. And clearly the United States had an inkling that there was an attack pending, because in the last 24 hours we have, of course, heard of the partial evacuation of the embassy in Baghdad, and a number of dependents were told that if they wanted to leave other embassies in the region, they could do so. There's certainly some concern, because if you remember back in 2019, when Donald Trump killed the then head of the Revolutionary Guard, there were attacks on the US embassy in Baghdad, and that was thought to be linked to Iranian proxies. Marco Rubio, in his statement, has said that the US were informed that Israel was taking this action. It was a matter of self-defense, as they were concerned. They didn't say that he supported the decision. What US officials are saying off the record is that the US was not involved and was not assisting. It doesn't say that they were not consulted, and it certainly appears that the US was moving towards the idea that there would be some sort of attack. We know that at some point over the last couple of months, Benjamin Netanyahu tried to sell Donald Trump on the idea of a military attack on Iranian nuclear facilities. But Donald Trump said that wasn't going to happen and was very keen to make sure that negotiations continued. And in fact, just in the last couple of hours, put out a statement on his Truth Social platform saying that he directed his entire government to work towards a diplomatic solution with Iran. Now, Twitter being Twitter, or X as it is now, of course, people are suggesting that the United States perhaps got involved in some sort of game with the Iranians to try and lull them into a false sense of security that there was no attack pending. But given the actions of the United States on Wednesday, it seems that that was pretty clear. What is also interesting, a couple of things. One, we were told by Tulsi Gabbard on March the 26th that, in her view, Iran was not moving towards building a nuclear weapon. She, of course, is the Director of National Intelligence in the United States. And over the last couple of months, we've seen Donald Trump move Iran hawks out of his orbit, including Mike Waltz, who was his first national security advisor, people who were very keen on launching some sort of military action against Iran, and they have moved out. Now, obviously, the suggestion is that Benjamin Netanyahu may well have seen that, worried that he might not get US support, and decided to cash in on the fact that Donald Trump has sold himself on the idea that he is the most pro-Israeli president in history, and so took this action, and just assuming that if Iran does take any sort of response to what has happened, then the United States will stand by them. But there's many people on right and left of the American political spectrum are saying that the United States cannot, should not, must not get involved in a battle that is really Israel's to fight, and the US should let them continue. People suggesting even that I was speaking to one expert who said that this is indeed a preemptive strike by the Israelis. Benjamin Netanyahu has preemptively finished the discussions that Donald Trump was having with the Iranians about their nuclear weapon program.
OK, Alan Fisher in Washington, D.C., thank you very much. Well, in the past couple of hours, Israel has struck a number of sites in Iran. If you are just joining us, this is the breaking news we've been bringing you for the last couple of hours now. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Tehran's enrichment and weaponization programs and one of the nation's top nuclear scientists were among infrastructure and the people targeted. There are reports that a number of Iranian commanders have also been killed. Israel declared an emergency situation across the country after the strikes. The US Secretary of State Marco Rubio warned against any retaliation by Iran on US positions in the Middle East. Rubio said the US was not involved in the attack, and he said Israel advised the US that they believed the strikes were necessary for their self-defense. Security sources in Iran say Tehran is planning a harsh response. Well, Al Jazeera's correspondent Ali Hashem joins us here in the studio. I just want to focus in, Ali, now. We've been hearing all kinds of reports about the military commanders that could have been targeted and killed in these attacks, and also these nuclear scientists. But what do we know about the numbers of people who have been killed? Clearly, there are civilians who have been killed here from the pictures that viewers are seeing on their screens now. Are there any official lines on how many people are dead and injured at the moment?
Well, we know of casualties. Till the moment, there is no clear toll, but it's a big number. The focus right now is on the scope of this attack. More than 53 targets were hit across Iran, from northwest to Tehran to recently. Now we're hearing also there was a new explosion in Natanz. We don't know if this is a new attack or it's just explosions as a result of the attack. Hamadan, Kermanshah, and so Elam on the borders with Iraq. So many areas around Iran were hit, were targeted. And of course, the picture with respect to the casualties is going to be dire. And we're waiting to see the Iranian Red Crescent, what they're going to announce in this regard. But what we now have and can confirm, according to Iranian news sources and news outlets, commander of the IRGC, Hussein Salami, was assassinated. Also, Major General Ghulam Ali Rashid, who is one of the very senior IRGC commanders, was also killed in the attack. Freydon Abbasi, a renowned Iranian nuclear scientist and the former head of Iran's nuclear agency, was also killed. Mr. Tehranchi, Dr. Tehranchi, who is the head of the Azad University and also a nuclear scientist, was also killed. Abdul Hamid Minochar, he's also a professor and he's head of the nuclear faculty at Shahid Beheshti University, was also killed. So, and there are still more names coming. Now, there were speculations of other names, such as Mohammed Baqiri, the commander of the Joint Staff, Joint Command. For now, there's nothing in this regard. The official Iranian news agency refuted this claim and said that he is leading the war room. Also, there were Israeli media reports said that one of those who were targeted was Ali Shamkhani, who is the former secretary of Iran's National Security Council. Now also we're seeing from Iranian media reports that he's not among the dead. But we're still waiting to see the list. The Israelis are saying there's a long list of commanders and nuclear scientists who were killed in this attack, and this is unprecedented. We're just seeing a kind of a copy-paste from what happened in Lebanon in 2024 when Israel killed Hezbollah's commanders, one after the other, the leader of Hezbollah, and also the Islamic Jihad in Gaza just a couple of years ago in one of Israel's attacks on Gaza before this war. So it seems the tactic is one, hitting the arms, then hitting the head and kind of addressing the problem. Now, what's going to happen with respect to the retaliation? This is the biggest question, and everyone is waiting. Now, the airport in Iran, Imam Khomeini Airport, has halted flights, and this is an indication that there's something that could happen. But the fact is that the region is in a war right now.
Yeah, and reports coming into us now showing how serious this situation is, with the Reuters news agency now reporting that Iran's supreme leader is alive, which they're having to ask that question at the very highest level. Now journalists and agencies are asking whether the top man in Iran
As I told you,
is...
Louisa, it doesn't look like an attack to dismantle a nuclear program, rather an attack to dismantle a system, an establishment. And this is clear from the targets, from the vast geography that the Israelis are hitting. And of course, in such an attack, several tens of airplanes, military airplanes, and submarines and missiles, surface to surface, were used. I'm still waiting to know what kind of weapons were used in this attack, because it was vast, it was big. And the most important thing now, what about Iran's air defenses? Were they hit? Were they compromised and neutralized by the end? Because this will pave the way for Israel for more attacks, and it will make more attacks kind of easier and more deadlier.
And Israel have been saying throughout the evening, throughout this time that we've been hearing these reports, that they are now shutting their country down, so the airport. And as you said, this is a sign of the fact that they are then preparing for potentially war. From here on then, we have no direction in terms of, when we've been speaking to the experts that have joined us, no one seems to know for sure where this is going. But clearly there's a lot of concern on both sides. And then we have Iran saying that they will hit back with force. And then the US coming in, the Secretary of State Marco Rubio saying, pretty much warning Iran to stay away from any US targets. So it seems, with all of those facts in place and all those statements, that there is a large fear that this could escalate from all of those parties involved.
Well, indeed. If Iran is going to hit directly on Israel, then it's not going to be just like the one in October. It's not going to be like the one in April. It's going to be a vast attack. Now, what's the scope of this attack? Where are they going to hit? And is it going to be deadly? Are there going to be casualties? Are we going to see more tit for tat And the Israelis are keen to continue this campaign, and they said it. This is going to take as much as it needs to dismantle Iran's program. Well, how much will this stay? And who is going to intervene or interfere in order to stop this war? Because now, we are in a state of war. This is very complicated, and it's not anymore about killing a commander somewhere in Syria or in Lebanon, or doing a clandestine security operation inside Tehran. This is about an act of war. Several civilians killed, several major, or let me say, senior commanders and officials are killed. So how Iran is going to address this, I think it's going to be very complicated, especially if the Iranians are also still keen to put aside the Americans. I mean, because in the past, the Iranians were saying that they are going to retaliate towards American bases in the region. But now, if they are going to retaliate directly to Israel, how is this going to happen? The third and most important thing, and we've been discussing this, what about the nuclear doctrine? Will it stay the same? Will it change? Because the Iranians are going to limit their coordination or cooperation with the international agency, the International Nuclear Agency. So this would mean the program will go into a situation of ambiguity, and there will be a cloud surrounding the nuclear program. Now, whether this nuclear program is going to be completely destroyed, this is also a big question, because it's a very complicated network of facilities. And we are actually speculating. It's been just like a couple of hours, 3 hours since this has started, but it just turned the whole region upside down.
Absolutely, turned the whole region upside down. Let's turn to Noor O'Day, who joins us from Amman now. And Noor, I'm just wondering what the very latest is from what you're hearing. I've just got a line that I just wanted to bring viewers, that Israel saying that, according to the Reuters news agency, reporting that Israel saying they fully coordinated with Washington on Iran. That word coordinated, very particularly used there. I'm just wondering, Noor, what you're hearing from where you are in Amman.
We're hearing much of the same from Israeli media reports and sources close to the Israeli Prime Minister. Interestingly as well, the Israeli Broadcasting Authority said that up until now, the Israeli Air Force, the Israeli fighter jets, have not been met with any kind of air defense from Iran, and this might corroborate what Israel had claimed the last time there was a strike on Iran, that it had decimated Iran's air defenses. Of course, we wait to see whether that is true or not, but certainly it's an interesting line coming out of Israel that the Israeli fighter jets did not face any kind of resistance in those ongoing attacks against Iran. And that as another line, of course, is that the assassinations that we're now receiving more and more confirmations of may not have all been done through airstrikes, because the Mossad, Israel's spy agency, has also confirmed that it carried out several clandestine attacks on Iranian territory as those airstrikes began. The Israeli side is very keen to paint Israeli-American cooperation and coordination. There is no other country in the world, perhaps, that has the kind of close relationship Israel has with the United States. We heard that from the Israeli Prime Minister in his statement, which was in English, talking about this attack being in Israel's interest, but also in that of the United States, talking about the friendship and the mutual interest, even using the term civilized world against one of the world's most dangerous countries or governments. And so that is the narrative, perhaps, that Benjamin Netanyahu will be very keen on repeating time and time again, probably also in order to overshadow any kind of criticism that this airstrike might get. In the meantime, the Israeli opposition has congratulated the Israeli army on its attack and expressed support for this attack against Iran, expressed confidence in the Israeli army and its capabilities, and support for the Israeli public, which will now be basically on lockdown, ordered to confine their activities to those allowed by the Israeli Home Command.
OK, Noor, thank you very much. Al Jazeera's correspondent Dorsa Jabari joins us now in the studio. Dorsa, just getting a report in here now that Iran's armed forces spokesperson has said that Israel and the US will pay a heavy price for the Israeli attack. That has been the line that they've been going down all through these reports that we've had coming into us of these attacks. It's an escalation, but it's really beyond that now.
Certainly, I think it is now clear this is a new chapter in the Middle East. And it is, this is the start of something very serious, and it's not likely, from what we're seeing now, going to end very soon. Iranians are waking up in Tehran and across the country to news that their country is still under attack, and officials are still trying to deal with what is happening. And I think it's very clear that Iran, in the next few hours, the leadership, specifically the Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, will have some very difficult decisions to make. The future of the establishment is now in question as a result of these actions, and they have to make it very clear that they are going to defend the country and its people, because we've seen civilian casualties. And the scenes we're seeing now in the capital, Tehran, are reminiscent of the Iran-Iraq war. And that is a time where I grew up in Tehran during that war. As a child, I remember these images vividly, not to this extent, but the bombings happening in the capital all day and night during that war. And this is the first time now since 1988, when that war ended, that Iranians are seeing these images, and it is extremely alarming and shocking. I've spoken to family members in Tehran, and they just say they have no words. They are in shock of what is happening. But the establishment is likely not going to buy any of the lines that we're getting from the United States. The Americans have been fully supporting Israel, and they know very clearly that Israel would not be able to carry out this operation, this wide-scale attack across Iran without U.S. support. So it's going to be very difficult for them not to deliver on the threats that they've been making over and over again for the past nearly 3 decades now. Netanyahu has said over and over again, his mission is to ensure Iran does not obtain a nuclear weapon. Iran has said, we don't want one. We have a nuclear program that is for civilian purposes. Now the IAEA is saying they've been hiding a parallel program. So the things have gotten very, very complicated, and that is why we're here now. And Israel clearly, yet again, have taken matters into their own hands. The Israeli Prime Minister making it clear that he doesn't listen to anyone. He doesn't answer to anyone. And the statement we saw from Netanyahu quoting religious reasons for his actions are going to be met with counter-religious reasons from the Iranians as to why they see this as a full act of war, and they're going to have to defend their country.
Dorsa, as you really put that into perspective, because you have covered this region extensively, and Ali, just to bring you in, you said that earlier, that it's 1988 that we really saw scenes of this magnitude. Of course, there have been attacks in the last year from Israel to Iran, but not on this scale. And putting that into perspective from your knowledge, how serious is this, and where could this go from here?
Well, this is a new situation, a new status quo. The whole Middle East is emerging into a state of war. I mean, it started, as we've been saying in the past hours. In the past, there were Iranian retaliation to attacks on Iranian commanders or assassinations in Damascus or, for example, Ismail Haniyeh inside Iran. But today there is an act of war, a vast attack on several provinces, on vital institutions, on commanders, officials in the state. So probably this is not going to end in a good way. I mean, for now, we are waiting. Now I'm hearing also that Ali Shamkhani, who is an advisor to Iran's supreme leader, former secretary to Iran's National Security Council, was injured in this attack. So this gives you an indication how much high these personnel who were killed or injured, the commander of the IRGC, Ghulam Ali Rashid, the nuclear scientists, the one we mentioned, Fridun Abbasi, and others. So this is becoming a situation where it's really difficult to see it being contained very soon.
We'll
live with it for some time.
I just want to bring you back in here. From your coverage of events over the last couple of years, clearly Israel they will see this as a successful attack, and they have inflicted a great deal of damage, clearly, just from the pictures that we're seeing coming into us. And we don't have, just to remind viewers, the full extent of those who are injured, those who have died, and that will come in, in the coming hours and days. But just in terms of Iran's firepower then, do they, in terms of military power, do they have the strength there to strike back?
Well, I think we've seen the two attacks that Iran launched on Israel last year, one in April and one in October. We saw a preview of what Iran is capable of. They have a huge arsenal of missiles and drones, and that is their strength. And they are known in the Middle East as having the largest missile program in the region. So they put that on display a little bit in those attacks. I think now what we're expecting is the Iranians to overwhelm the air defense systems in Israel. And that is why we've had Israeli officials telling civilians to not leave their homes, because they're expecting Iran to respond in this manner. That is one of the things we're expecting. I think we have to remember Iran has been under international sanctions for many, many years. Their military program, their missile program. So it's been very difficult for them to advance at the rate that they would have wanted to. But despite that, they've managed, with the help of Russia and China, to really go as far as they can. And they've spent a tremendous amount of money on their defensive capabilities. So I think we're going to see their response very, very soon. And it's most likely going to be in a coordinated, multi-faceted drone and missile attack on Israel. So they are capable of responding. Whether or not they will be able to sustain it for a long period of time, we'll have to wait and see.
OK, we will see what happens. Just to bring you to Washington, D.C. now, and let's bring in Alan Fisher, who can tell us what the US perspective has been in all of this. Alan, we've heard in the last couple of hours from the president, then we've heard from the Secretary of State, the US distancing themselves from having anything to do with this attack. What is the latest on the US position?
Well, just to remind people that the president hasn't actually spoken since the news of the attack itself broke. He was at a congressional picnic at the White House. It is an annual event. He made some remarks, but it was more about the weather and the picnic. And then he retired to the White House itself. At that point, we are told he went to the Situation Room. He's due to be back there at 11 o'clock Washington time tomorrow morning, where he'll meet with his national security team. We can be sure that he has been briefed about what has been happening. And certainly we know that the United States was expecting something of this magnitude, given that just 24 hours ago, just over 24 hours ago, they announced the partial evacuation of their embassy in Baghdad and said that other non-essential staff, if they wanted to leave other US embassies in the Middle East, particularly Bahrain, Kuwait, United Arab Emirates, then arrangements were being made to do so. It's interesting that a number of ambassadors, the key diplomatic posts in places like Kuwait and Bahrain, they have not been filled by the Trump administration. What is also important to note is that around Donald Trump, a number of people who have been considered Iran hawks, those who were keen in prosecuting a war against Iran or certainly helping Israel prosecute a war against Iran, they have been moved out of the national security sphere. Most prominent of those was Mike Waltz, who was the national security advisor. Donald Trump said that he wasn't quite sure about his position on some things, but wanted to move him to a more important position, which, of course, was the UN ambassador. What is interesting is, in that period of time, we haven't seen his nomination be forwarded to the Senate, which is important. And, of course, we had Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, taking over as the National Security Advisor. He has issued a statement since the attack. He said that the United States was informed that this was going to happen, that Israel was acting in its national self-interest. He warned Iran not to target either US personnel or interests. We are told by a number of US officials that the US was not involved and not assisting, although in the past, when Israel has launched attacks of this kind, there has been logistic support from the United States. So it'll be interesting to see if that stands out. Certainly, people were concerned that Benjamin Netanyahu may have taken this action as Donald Trump was preparing for his administration to have another round of talks with the Iranians in the Middle East at the weekend. It's important to point out that on April the 12th, Donald Trump said that the Iranians had to come to the table and seriously discuss their position when it comes to the Iran nuclear program, or else they would face military action. And he gave them a 60-day deadline to do that. Today is day 61.
Alan Fisher, thanks very much indeed. In the past couple of hours, Israel has struck a number of sites in Iran. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Tehran's nuclear enrichment and what he calls weaponization programs were targeted. There are reports that a number of Iranian commanders and nuclear scientists have been killed. Israel declared an emergency situation across the country after the strikes. The US Secretary of State Marco Rubio warned against any retaliation by Iran on US positions in the Middle East. Rubio said the US was not involved in the attack. He said Israel advised the US that they believe the strikes were necessary for self-defense. A spokesman for the Iranian armed forces say Israel and the US will pay a heavy price for the attack. Well, Noor O'Day joins us now from Amman. So, Noor, we've heard an unrepentant Israeli Prime Minister justifying these attacks.
We certainly have the Israeli Prime Minister addressing the world, really, in English, saying that this was an attack that Israel had the right to do. He called it a preemptive attack. He said it was in the interest of protecting Israel, but also of the United States. Benjamin Netanyahu very keen on trying to paint a picture, a narrative of Israeli-U.S. coordination. That line, of course, being also repeated on Israeli news outlets, that there was coordination, no participation, but certainly that the U.S. and Israel did not stand apart on this. The Israeli media in the past few minutes reporting a fourth wave of airstrikes across Iran. The list of assassinated officials, academics, and nuclear scientists, according to Mossad sources speaking to the Israeli army radio, according to them, it is long, it is unprecedented. Some security sources say that what Israel did to Hezbollah in 10 days, taking out the leadership ranks in 10 days, it has done, or at least attempted to do, in Iran in just 10 minutes. If that is true, this would really spin the region into something completely uncharted in terms of tension, in terms of repercussions. And of course, Israel is in a state of emergency. The airspace is under lockdown. There are no flights going in or out of Ben Gurion Airport. All normal daily activity in Israel has been cancelled in accordance with the instructions of the Israeli home command, and Israelis have been instructed to stay close to safe areas. Those areas, of course, being the shelters that Israel has in various cities and communities. Of course, Israeli Palestinian citizens have long complained that they are short on those protection mechanisms, and so they are lacking, if you will, in those protections. Palestinians in the occupied West Bank are under lockdown, no shelters there for them.
Okay, well, Al Jazeera's correspondent Dorsa Jabari joins us here now in the studio. Dorsa, you've covered this region extensively, but what will the mood be like in Tehran now, waking up to this?
I think shock, fear, and disbelief. I've been speaking to members of my own family who are in Tehran, and they are still trying to process things that have happened over the past few hours. I think this is something that people had always had as a thought that it could happen in the back of their minds as Iranians. 47 years since the revolution of 1979, and the Iranians have been anti-Israel since then. So this threat of Israel has been looming over Iran for decades. And this past year, we saw 2 attacks, exchanges between the 2 sides that broke this psychological barrier that existed between Iran and Israel, that this kind of military action against one another was never going to happen. Those operations, those attacks, limited as they were contained to specific targets in Iran and in Israel. So the general population didn't really suffer as a result of it. They didn't experience it the same way that we're seeing the images now in Iran. This, though, is the full-on version of what Israel has been promising, Netanyahu's dream for 3 decades, to ensure that Iran does not have a nuclear weapon, something the Iranians have said they are not interested in, they don't want. So we have seen these images now, and what people are experiencing waking up in Tehran now on a Friday, it's a holiday, public holiday, is going to be very, very traumatizing. It's going to be very, very difficult for people to process what is happening and the scale of it as well. And as we understand it, it is ongoing. It hasn't ended, the operation, as Israel has said. So the last time Iranians saw these images in the capital and other cities was during the Iran-Iraq War. And I remember as a child growing up in Tehran, the capital would come under attack on a daily basis. So those memories linger with that generation. The new generation, however, has never witnessed anything like this. And so it's going to be very much a shock, and we're seeing civilian casualties already as a result of this attack. So it's going to be very difficult for Iranians to come to terms with this finally happening inside their country. And of course, the question they will have is, what will the officials do to respond? And just want to tell you that we've heard from the Iranian Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. He has issued a statement paying condolences to what he says are martyrs, the nuclear scientists and officials from the military. And he's also warned Israel that there will be a bitter and painful fate that is awaiting Israel.
Okay, well, Al Jazeera correspondent Ali Hashim is also with us here in the studio. Ali